The 90s were known as the Massacre era in the Philippines, highlighted by all the justice films made to give a voice to the victims of real-life gory massacres. One such story was based on Myrna Diones, a 14-year-old survivor of brutal killings. She was left dying on a cliff, surrounded by her deceased relatives. It would have been a perfect crime if she hadn't miraculously woken up while her body was about to be embalmed. This is Myrna's story of how she narrowly escaped death and helped put the culprits behind bars. Around 8 o'clock on the morning of June 19, 1992, a police station in Benguet, a northern province in Luzon, Philippines, received a report of an alleged salvage victim found in Sitio Daques, Sablan. Salvage is a term used in the Philippines to describe a summary execution, where a person's capture, accusation, and execution occur within a very short period and without the benefit of a trial, typically carried out by police, crime syndicates, urban vigilantes, or communist hit squads. Although such incidents were common in the 90s, what the police discovered next was still shocking. 20 feet below Nagilan Road in Banangan, they found a woman who appeared to have been strangled to death, with stab wounds covering her body. Nearby, they discovered 2 different colored sandals and another shoe, which prompted them to search for other victims. They didn't have to look far. 50 feet from the first body, they found another woman with a nylon rope around her neck. A third woman, found 30 feet away, was in a similar state. A day after, another victim was recovered a kilometer away, also with multiple stab wounds and signs of strangulation. What happened to these women? And why were they left on a cliff? Who could commit such a horrendous act? These questions would be answered by the third woman, or rather, a teenager, as she was only 14 at the time and miraculously survived the ordeal. Everyone who discovered the bodies of the 4 women believed they were recovering corpses, given the severe damage inflicted. The bodies were immediately taken to a funeral home in Baguio City for embalming. There, Myrna's parents, Juanita and Eusebio, identified their family members. The 4 women were covered with white sheets as the embalmer prepared to treat the Diones family's bodies. But during the preparations, the embalmer noticed something startling on Myrna's body. As he was about to inject her, Myrna's fingers moved and her eyelids twitched. The embalmer ran out, shouting that the dead girl was still alive. Rushed to Baguio General Hospital, Myrna later regained consciousness and was immediately interviewed. She was heavily bruised, her body and face wrapped in bandages, and her face was barely recognizable. This was because her head, arms, and various parts of her body had been repeatedly smashed with a hammer. She was also stabbed in her chest, armpits, and back with bamboo cane spears. It was nothing short of a miracle that Myrna was still alive at that point. Barely clinging to life in her hospital bed, Myrna was able to recount the frightening sequence of events that began on June 17, 1992. She told her parents that she would visit her brother, Toribio Diones, in San Fernando, La Union, to collect money for her school uniforms. While waiting at the bus station, she was joined by her older sister, Zenaida Diones Fragadi, who was 5 months pregnant, her sister-in-law, Vivian Gonzalez Diones, and her cousin, Larita Diones Nicha. Together, they traveled to La Union. Myrna's brother wasn't home, but his wife gave her 1,000 pesos. After shopping, they waited at a public market to catch a bus back home. Feeling dizzy after the long ride, Myrna bought medicine from a nearby pharmacy. It was there that she noticed a man eyeing her family members suspiciously. When they left the market, the man followed. Alarmed, Myrna rushed to rejoin her family at a jeepney parking area. The man, later identified as a police officer, Edwin Tubiera, was joined by another officer. As they were about to board a tricycle, Tubiera accused them of stealing from the market and blocked their departure. The group was stunned, as they had only browsed the clothes. Fearing abandonment and unsure how to get home, Myrna stayed close to her relatives. The police, who seemed to appear out of nowhere, were intent on arresting the women without any proof. Despite their protest, the second officer, Jose Flores, used a handheld radio to call for backup. Shortly after, 3 more policemen arrived in a vehicle and forced all 4 women inside a Ford Fiera, informing them they were being taken to Station B. They were held in a small cell at the Kanawe Community Precinct. The women remained detained until the following afternoon. When the officers left the station briefly, the cook approached them, warning that they were dealing with killers and urging them to cooperate to survive. Despite the women insisting on their innocence, Vivian, heavily pregnant, was particularly desperate, pleading for her and her baby's safety. The cook, however, could only reiterate that the officers were corrupt and above the law, and urged them to confess before it was too late. The women were still crying when the officers returned. Before midnight, a tall man arrived, surveyed each of them, and then slept on a folding bed. An hour later, Flores reappeared and told the women they were to meet Mayor Ortega and beg for their freedom. Outside, it was still dark, but Myrna saw a white Ford Fiera and a red car. They were forced into the Fiera while Lorita was taken separately in the red car. They drove off just after midnight, with the red car following closely. As they passed signs for Naguilan and Burgos, Flores ordered the others to handcuff the women. Their hands were secured behind their backs, and Myrna noticed items like a tire, rope, and bamboo spears on the vehicle's floor. After passing the Welcome to Cordillera sign, Flores commanded the officers to tie the women. Tubiera quickly wrapped a rope around Myrna's neck, while the others did the same to Zenaida and Vivian. The officers then viciously attacked the women, stabbing them with bamboo spears, causing blood to gush and splash across the vehicle. Amid this chaos, Tubiera stabbed Myrna's left eyebrow and struck her head multiple times until she lost consciousness. After hearing Myrna's story, Major Mario San Diego, the regional chief of the Criminal Investigation Service, informed the La Union police about the possible involvement of some of his officers in the crimes. La Union police provided the records of where police officers were stationed in June 1992 at the San Fernando police station, and also supplied photographs of all the policemen there. Myrna was shown these photographs and was able to identify 5 officers as the ones who abducted, detained, and attacked her. On July 16, 1992, Myrna was shown more photographs of police officers and recognized another attacker, Leonito Macapagal. On July 2, 1993, 5 policemen were charged in the Regional Trial Court of Benguet for the deaths of Vivian, Zenaida, and Lorita. The charges included murder with unintentional abortion, as Vivian was pregnant, 2 counts of murder for the deaths of Lorita and Zenaida, and frustrated murder for the attack on Myrna. The court acquitted Leonito Macapagal due to insufficient evidence, while the identity of the tall man involved remains unknown, and he is still at large. The 5 convicted policemen appealed the judgment, questioning Myrna's reliability as a witness. They argued that she appeared confused and inconsistent during cross-examination, and they also challenged the testimony of Myrna's father, Eusebio, regarding the identification of the 3 victims' bodies. Also, they contested the court's dismissal of their alibis. However, the Supreme Court ruled in favor of Myrna, noting her unique position as the lone survivor who could positively identify the policemen involved. Myrna had identified the officers on 3 separate occasions with consistency and accuracy. She first identified them from the photographs of policemen assigned to San Fernando La Union. She then recognized each of them during a police lineup conducted behind a one-way mirror. Although Myrna's testimony varied in some details, it's important to remember that she was recounting her ordeal less than 6 months after the traumatic events, which had a profound impact on her. Evident from her emotional distress during the trial that led to the postponement of her testimony on 2 occasions. Myrna Diones was not accused of having any malicious intent to falsely accuse the policemen. She realized how close she had come to death, and because she survived, she felt it was her duty to ensure that the perpetrators who killed her family were brought to justice. The psychological and mental strain of having to recall the specifics of such a harrowing event, coupled with the fact that she testified for 8 days, 5 of which were under intense cross-examination by defense attorneys, contributed to some inconsistencies in her testimony. Despite these challenges, the nearly 350 pages of trial transcripts containing her testimony show no uncertainty about the identity of her attackers. The alibis provided by the accused policemen were not compelling. They were deemed weak, unreliable, and easy to fabricate, often supported by testimony from family members, neighbors, or colleagues who could have been persuaded to lie. They were sentenced to reclusion perpetua. Additionally, for the charge of attempted murder, they received a sentence ranging from a minimum of 10 years to a maximum of 17 years and 4 months. The criminals in Myrna Diones' case were lucky that the death penalty wasn't on the table at the time, because their actions surely could have qualified for it, considering they broke the very laws they had promised to protect as the members of the Philippine National Police. They plotted together and abused their power to benefit themselves, and if Myrna hadn't miraculously woken up when she did, they might have gotten away with it. The motives behind the killings were not specified in court documents. The women died for no reason. Such abuses of power aren't rare, especially in areas where local authorities can make their own rules without much pushback. People in power often resort to summary executions to get rid of anyone who opposes them, or just because they can. According to a journalist who covered the case, even if the girls had actually stolen clothes, the police's reaction was way too harsh and inhumane. The police are supposed to protect people, not execute them without a trial. Myrna's ordeal was one of the first to be made into a movie in the 90s, drawing attention from all over the country and showing how important the media is in making sure such cases don't get swept under the rug. However, media attention can be a mixed blessing. The movie suggested that the women were sexually assaulted, which the court found no evidence of, and Myrna didn't say this happened either. This caused a lot of controversies since the movie came out while the trial was still going on, and the court wasn't happy about it influencing public opinion and possibly affecting the outcome. It's been over 20 years, but Myrna is still haunted by those terrifying memories. The news that the Philippine Bureau of Corrections released convicts under the Good Conduct Time Allowance law came as a shock and a bitter reminder of injustice to many, including Myrna and her family. Among those released were 4 of the 5 policemen, Artienda, Corpuz, Merica, and Tubiera, who were involved in her ordeal, and they were set free on various dates in 2017. This decision understandably stirred fear and a strong sense of injustice among the Filipino citizens, reminding them of the deep scars left by such heinous acts. Above all, this surely must have reopened old wounds for Myrna and the families of the other victims. We extend our deepest condolences to everyone affected by this nightmare. It is our hope that Myrna finds strength and support in her journey towards healing, so that she may one day live free from the trauma inflicted upon her and her loved ones. Her courage and resilience continue to inspire, and we stand with her and all victims in their quest for justice and recovery. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.